Good evening, you're watching World News Tonight on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Brussels is urging Kyiv to reverse a new law that brings the Independent Anti-Corruption Bureau under state control, warning that Ukraine's EU accession is at stake. Tonight, an exclusive interview with European Commissioner for Enlargement Marta Kos and Poland's top diplomat and newly appointed Deputy Prime Minister Radosław Sikorski. More on that in just a moment. But first, tonight's headlines. A major reshuffle for Poland's ruling coalition. Officials from Ukraine and Russia meet for peace talks in Turkey. And a historic climate decision by the International Court of Justice. The European Union is calling on Ukraine to roll back its crackdown on the country's Anti-Corruption Bureau after Kyiv passed a new bill effectively ending its independence. The saga has prompted Ukrainians to take to the streets in the largest protests since Russia's full-scale invasion began. And as we go to air tonight, President Volodymyr Zelensky appears to be trying to calm the waters, promising to restore independence, but failing to provide further details. John Todd has more on this developing story.
Concern in Kyiv sparks Ukraine's largest wartime protests. They're in response to a new law that brings two key independent anti-corruption agencies under state control. In an exclusive interview with TVP World, the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, called on President Zelensky to reverse the law.
The message to the President and to the government is that I'm concerned because fighting corruption is one of the basics on the way to become an EU member. And it is a precondition that the state is having independent anti-corruption agencies. In this respect, I expect that we will go back to the independent agencies.
Poland's Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, who hosted Kos in Warsaw, was even more explicit.
The fastest way for Ukraine to lose the support both of the EU and the member states and the publics in member states is to go back to the bad old days of corruption. As a corrupt country, Ukraine will not make it into the EU.
The law grants the presidentially appointed Prosecutor General expanded authority over the National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. It followed arrests on Monday of two alleged Russian moles. The demonstrations are countrywide. Critics have accused Zelensky of a power grab that would delight Russia's leadership.
Instability in Ukraine and rolling back reforms, rule of law and anti-corruption reforms, all that plays well for Russian narratives. And Kremlin is absolutely happy. I think they are, applauding what is happening.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has conveyed her strong concern to Zelensky about the anti-corruption restrictions. According to officials, von der Leyen demanded an explanation from Kyiv. Zelensky met with the anti-corruption chiefs on Wednesday and later in the day attempted to address concerns.
I will propose to Parliament a bill that will be a response, which will ensure strength in the law enforcement system. There will be no Russian influence or interference in the activities of law enforcement agencies and, very importantly, all provisions for the independence of anti-corruption institutions will be included.
Marta Kos also had a message for those who've taken to the streets in Ukraine.
For the citizens of Ukraine, I would say I am your biggest supporter and I will stay your biggest supporter. And helping Ukraine becoming a member of the EU is the most important task I have as a commissioner for enlargement.
John Todd for TVP World.
And we'll have that exclusive interview with Commissioner Marta Kos and Radosław Sikorski later in the show. But for more on Ukraine now, let's go live to Kyiv, where our correspondent Oz Chatterjee is standing by. Good evening, Oz. A second night of protests near President Zelensky's office. What is the feeling like on the ground?
There's a lot of anger here in the second of protest here in Kyiv. Now, hundreds of protesters who may be able to continue to move towards the central administration building, where there are several now at least gathered protesting, and it seems to get larger as on the here in Kyiv.
Sorry, Oz, we seem to be having some technical difficulties there, but clearly a lot of anger on the ground. Those protests happening for the second night in a row near President Volodymyr Zelensky's office. So we will try come back to Oz Kadagi in Kyiv if we can. Otherwise, let's move on to our next story. And we stay with Ukraine now. Officials from Kyiv and Moscow have just moments ago begun a third round of direct peace talks in Istanbul. It comes as the clock counts down on US President Donald Trump's threat of severe sanctions if Russia does not agree to a ceasefire by early September. Ukraine's delegation is again represented by Rustem Umerov, head of the National Security and Defense Council, with Russia sending advisor to President Vladimir Putin, Vladimir Medinsky. Both sides have traded draft peace proposals, but any breakthrough remains unlikely, with the Kremlin earlier warning not to expect miracles. Ahead of the meeting, priorities included the further release of political prisoners and setting up a potential sit-down between Zelensky and Putin. Poland's long-awaited government reshuffle is out, and Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski is up. The country's top diplomat will take on the extra job of Deputy Prime Minister, with the biggest wholesale changes coming to the Ministry of Justice. As Kazimierz Świsek reports, Prime Minister Donald Tusk is aiming to re-energise the centrist ruling coalition in the wake of last month's surprise presidential election loss.
The wind of change is blowing in Poland. Prime Minister Donald Tusk has announced his new cabinet.
Part of our plan to rebuild faith in this ruling coalition is to sort out its internal divisions. This short presentation of the new cabinet is also meant to be a clear declaration. No more disagreements inside the coalition.
The government reshuffle comes after the ruling centre-liberal coalition lost the presidential election in June to the conservative opposition candidate Karol Nawrocki. With just 2 years left until the next parliamentary election, Prime Minister Tusk is looking to regroup and regain momentum.
It is expected that the president will be strongly opposing many of the ideas of the government. Therefore, the idea for the reconstruction of the reshuffle was to provide new opening, new energy, and also providing new concepts when it comes to the structure of the government.
One of the biggest changes concerns the Justice Ministry. Judge Waldemar Żurek will replace Adam Bodnar as Justice Minister. He will now face the difficult task of speeding up investigations into the multiple scandals of the previous conservative Law and Justice government. He will also attempt to restore the independence of some of the major courts in Poland. Judge Żurek was one of the justices who opposed the reforms introduced by the Conservatives, but undoing them won't be easy.
He knows very well what are the problems that were created by the previous government. However, my concern is that as he is a very well-known figure, one of the leaders of this movement, it will be very problematic for him to form any kind of consensus with the president, who is coming from the opposition party.
The Conservative opposition, in turn, was quick to criticize the reshuffle, attacking the choice of a judge for the position of Justice Minister.
Simply put, this is a show of helplessness of this coalition.
Another change in the reshuffle is the merging of several ministries into bigger ones, like the new Ministry of Finance and Economy. It will still be led by Finance Minister Andrzej Domański.
He's going to be much more engaged in allocation of funds and redistribution of funds and managing the economy overall, be responsible for economy. So this is a very careful job that one has to be very Somebody has to be very skillful to manage this correctly.
While some ministers lost their jobs, others are taking on additional roles. Poland's foreign minister Radosław Sikorski will now serve double duty as the deputy prime minister. Opinion polls show his recent rise in popularity, making him the most trusted politician in Poland. Will he be aiming even higher in the future?
You want to be prime minister one day?
Ha ha. You're trying to destroy me.
Sikorski's promotion to deputy prime minister is another way the government of Donald Tusk is looking to gain momentum after the lost presidential election. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Brussels and Washington may be nearing a trade deal that would slap a 15% tariff on European imports, including cars. That's according to European diplomats and media reports, which indicate an agreement could be close and would mirror America's recent pact with Japan. Certain goods, such as aircraft and medical devices, are set to be excluded. If a deal is not reached by next month, the EU intends to roll out tariffs of up to 30%, valued at €93 billion, to match President Trump's threats. The United Nations highest court has delivered a sobering opinion on the world's climate, saying a healthy environment is a human right. The case first started in a classroom in the Pacific Islands before becoming the largest in the court's history, with testimonies from more than 100 countries. So what happens next? Sonia Agata-Bischan explains.
In a landmark opinion, the International Court of Justice has outlined countries' obligations with respect to climate change, arguing its effects are severe and far-reaching.
These consequences underscore the urgent and existential threat posed by climate change.
Residents of the Pacific Islands, those that brought the case to The Hague, agree.
And so what is left of us? What is left of Pacific Islands or young people? What does the future even look like if we do not even have a home?
The case began years ago in a classroom in Vanuatu, when students were tasked with envisioning how international law could be used to address climate change. They concluded it was a task for the ICJ.
And these 27 students in that classroom actually took to the government and stated that they really want to make this a reality, and hence the state of the country of Vanuatu actually championed for them and with them in this movement, bringing it to the United Nations General Assembly,
which unanimously requested ICJ's advisory opinion on countries' obligations surrounding climate change. Climate change, which is palpable in Vanuatu, where tropical cyclones have become more damaging over the years, and rising sea levels are forcing people to leave previously habitable areas.
It's starting to wash away the village.
In its written submission to the ICJ, Greenpeace argued that
there is an obligation on all states not to contribute to the extinction of other states.
In the hearings, countries which are top fossil fuel polluters showed some resistance to the prospect of increased obligations, but according to experts, the court did not overstep by taking on this case.
Their core functions is to clarify points of international law when it is requested by the United Nations General Assembly. And this is precisely what happened here. By no means is the court overstepping here, and every state in the world had their opportunity to voice their concerns or to oppose this, and they did not in the General Assembly.
Although the advisory opinion is non-binding, Vanuatu's climate change minister has hope in the development, particularly in the context of increasing number of climate change cases.
So every court, this will be something they can use, whether it's a municipal level court or a state level court. They will be able to use this new ruling to try to make governments be more accountable and do more.
With over 100 countries taking part in the proceedings, this was one of the cases with the highest participation in the history of the court. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Agata-Bischan.
Earlier today, I sat down with European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, and Polish Foreign Minister and newly appointed Deputy Prime Minister, Radosław Sikorski. Here is that exclusive interview, edited for length, with the full 20 minutes, available at TVP World on YouTube and tvpworld.com. Commissioner, can I start with this developing story from Kyiv? the new law, the protests, the raids. What is your message to President Volodymyr Zelensky right now?
I have two messages, one for him and one for the citizens of Ukraine. And the message to the president and to the government is that I'm concerned because fighting corruption is one of the basics on the way to become an EU member. And it is a precondition that the state is having independent anti-corruption agencies, organization. You know, it doesn't matter in which sense, because, you know, every country decides by itself how it will fight the corruption, but it has to be independent. In this respect, I expect that we will go back to the independent agencies. And for the citizens of Ukraine, I would say, I am your biggest supporter, and I will stay your biggest supporter. And helping Ukraine becoming a member of the EU is the most important task I have as a commissioner for enlargement. And in this respect, you know, that the people of Ukraine have shown that they care about their country. This is, for me, even if they are protesting, this is the most important question, because it means they care about their own country and they care how the government will tackle the corruption.
So your message to the president is reverse this law?
Yes, we will see how this will be done, but yes, it would be great if we would go back to the independent institutions.
Minister, we're now seeing some of the largest protests in Ukraine since Russia's full-scale invasion. Has President Zelensky failed to read the room here? Has he made a mistake?
Well, I can only reinforce what the Commissioner has said. The fastest way for Ukraine to lose the support both of the EU and the Member States and the publics in Member States is to go back to the bad old days of corruption. As a corrupt country, Ukraine will not make it into the EU. We have to be convinced that the authorities from top to bottom are determined to stamp out corruption.
So as a neighbour of Ukraine, do you feel that the raids in this new bill are political overreach, or, as the authorities are saying, that there could be evidence to suggest there are Russian spies, Russian infiltration?
I'm sure there are all kinds of shenanigans. We sympathize with Ukraine's resistance against Russian aggression, so it is up to President Zelensky to fix this.
And Commissioner, I want to ask you the same question. Is this new bill political overreach? Or have you seen evidence, have you seen suggestions that this claim, the suggestion that there's Russian infiltration could prove true?
I don't know about the rationale why these steps have been made. I can only interpret together with my team in Brussels what we got. And what we got is that actually the independence of the agencies is now being threatened or has been abolished. So, but you know, in my opinion, the institutions itself are not enough. And I'm speaking about also corruption also in the member states. It exists. It has to be, you know, the feeling of the people. So the people have to recognize what is the problem. And this is why I was positive before in my answer. So it is the sensibility of the citizens of every and each state, you know, to which extent they will accept the corruption or not.
The Minister just pointed out Ukraine's EU path. I mean, is Ukraine's accession at risk here?
Not yet. Not yet, you know, because the whole accession process is preparing one country for the EU membership, and in this case, Ukraine. There is so much to do, and Ukraine has done a lot. They have done many, many reforms while the bombs are falling on the country, so this is very, very remarkable. And no, we will still have to go a lot, the whole way or long way, until we will come to the end of the accession process, which is on one hand aligning the alignment with their legislation with the European one, so reforms. On the other hand, it is also about preparing the country to be a strong future member of the EU. But there is one point where I see the danger, and this danger is now we are speaking more and more about reconstruction or modernization of Ukraine, meaning that the money from EU or from the member states will not be enough. We will have to bring in also the private investors. And private investors will not come if there will be no legal certainty that their investments or their engagement in Ukraine will be safe.
So the Minister?
I just would like to pick up on one point. We have these challenges in the current member states too. Yeah. And for example, Poland's previous government didn't want to join the European prosecution system. We joined, and it's now being established in more than, not just in the capital. And this is a service that prosecutes crimes against EU funds and transnational VAT fraud. So the direction of travel is important. Are you traveling towards stamping out corruption, or are you going back? And unfortunately, the impression has now been created that there might be going back.
And I guess the coming days and weeks will tell the real story, right?
Indeed.
Quickly, Commissioner, on what you said, that, look, it's not at risk yet, but it is at stake, isn't it?
It is at stake. Why? Because, you know, part of fighting the corruption is in the first cluster we intend to open soon. And it is under the name of fundamentals. So it is fundamentally important that the country will have its own institutions who will be able to fight the corruption. And this is, you know, why the preparation for the membership is so important, why the negotiations are taking some time. So we have to have the institutions who will be ready to fight not just for anti-corruption, but also who will be able to resist on anti-democratic tendencies, who will be able to fight against the Russian hybrid war and so on. So this is the meaning of the accession process.
Minister, when we talk about Poland and Poland's support for Ukraine, how could this impact Poland's support for Ukraine's EU accession, given that the EU accession process is a merit-based process?
Well, you've heard the Commissioner. This is cluster one. This is the cluster which we wanted to open during the Polish presidency. We've had a veto from Hungary. And, you know, Ukraine, please don't give Hungary the pretext to continue to veto opening cluster one, fundamentals. Corruption is fundamental.
Do you feel like that what we're seeing here is giving that pretext? It's giving Viktor Orban, Hungary, an excuse to say, yeah, Ukraine's not ready?
Not just Hungary. Russian propaganda will be delighted by this.
Speaking of the EU presidency, Commissioner, how do you assess the 6 months that Poland spent at the helm of the EU presidency? And speaking of the veto of Hungary, does Hungary remain as the Achilles heel of the European Union?
What we see today is, and really congratulations to your presidency, dear Mr. Minister, because, you know, Poland has chosen security as the main topic. And now nearly everything it is about security, which we have to provide by ourselves. So this is really well done. It's not just about Hungary, you know, it is about the credibility of the whole process. And this is much bigger than Hungary, really. And speaking about the Hungary, you know, Hungary has given a green light to given Ukraine candidate status. So it was EU27 decision. And I hope that they will stick to this. The second point, we have just made, it is not public yet because it is completely fresh, special Eurobarometer on enlargement. 64% of the citizens of Hungary are supporting enlargement process as general in the European Union, meaning that people of Hungary know what enlargement has brought to them, and we are building on this. And speaking about the enlargement nowadays, for me, it is much bigger than just making our European Union bigger in square kilometers or in the number of people. It is about security. It is about having peace in Europe. You know, I'm the generation which grew up in the times of flower power, make love, not war. And I thought personally that if I simplify, that love is enough. That really we don't need to arm ourselves, you know, to be ready for the war. But then, you know, 3.5 hours after my country has declared independence, the tanks rolled out of the Yugoslav army. So it was a clear sign, no, the peace or freedom or prosperity in Europe will not come just like this. So we have to do something for this. Coming back to enlargement. And enlargement today is again about peace, having peace in Europe. And if we will get all the candidates, including Ukraine, in the European Union, we will be more safe. We will be more secure, especially, Poland here, having the border with Ukraine and some other countries which are trying to endanger our European Union.
Indeed, and as we talk about arming, about the security of Europe, has Donald Trump given Vladimir Putin 50 days basically to bomb Ukraine?
Well, I wish the ultimatum was shorter, but good news is that in the meantime, the weapons are flowing and new types of weapons are being prepared for shipment. So it's not an empty 50 days, it's a change of policy from trying to please Vladimir Putin to strengthening Ukraine's resistance capacity.
Do you have any hopes for these peace talks in Istanbul?
I hope that Russia will eventually run out of resources for prosecuting this war, and then Putin will become more reasonable.
And what does what we're seeing in these last few days mean for Ukraine's positioning both in Europe and America and Washington? When we see these allegations come out from Kyiv, they've been on somewhat a positive track. They've been gathering momentum. Washington has turned towards Kyiv more and more through Donald Trump just in the recent weeks. So how does this change that?
It risks losing the advantage, the political capital that, as you say, has been accumulated.
Commissioner, to wrap it up on enlargement, when it comes to EU unity, how fine is that balancing act on enlargement? Because on one hand, you have a stronger membership, and on the other, there are more opportunities, I guess, for member states to fracture, for disharmony. I'm thinking now again about Hungary, about Slovakia.
The beauty of the EU, it's our diversity. Yes, sometimes we are slow in the decision-making process because we have to compromise, because we listen to each other. Once I was asked, but the decision-making process or decisions of Putin or Mr. Trump are much quicker than from you. It's a kind of logic, you have to ask and get the opinion. We stick together because we want to help each other. We stick together because, we are a market of 450 million people. We stick together because, we are taking care of not just the member states, but also of the candidate countries. Who is investing money in the partnerships around Europe? We are doing this all the time. Who is investing the money into our candidates that they will get ready? And I think that this solidarity principle is something we many times forget, but it is getting more and more important.
Minister, while I have you again, congratulations on becoming Deputy Prime Minister. A few brief questions. Are you confident that the ruling coalition will still be in place until 2027?
Yes, absolutely. And we've just seen that they were able to agree a complex government reshuffle, which is best proof of that.
Do you feel like the Polish presidential election, the somewhat surprise election of the right-wing Karol Nawrocki, that came as a surprise to the coalition?
Of course. Our candidate was leading in the polls. But we've had a coalition hitherto, and we'll still have a cohabitation.
Do you regret not being able to run in that race?
Well, that's in the past.
And you're a very popular politician here in Poland. In fact, the polls have shown you're the most popular politician.
In one poll.
Well, in one poll. Two, I believe. Do you want
but he's popular, sorry to interrupt, but he's popular also in Brussels, not just here in Poland, I can tell you.
So maybe you want to be Prime Minister one day?
Ha ha. You're trying to destroy me.
Radosław Sikorski and Marta Kos, thank you so much for your time.
A pleasure.
And that's all for this exclusive interview here on TVP World. I'm Aaron Darman. Goodbye for now.